Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Bauman, a member of the school board, and we're very happy to be here tonight with MGT to present and show us some boundary and start this process that we'd like to just remind everyone that we are, as a board and as a school district, we are looking to be as supportive in this transition as possible for our students, families, and the community. I'd like to introduce Lance from MGT. He'll take it away.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone. You're welcome to stay in the back. I promise I don't bite, but I will come to you. So being back there doesn't remove you from interacting with me throughout this process. We appreciate you taking this time. This is a real testament to your community that you're able to come out and join us this evening to see what we have, what we're presenting here and the information you'll have. Just a few quick notes. One, this will be posted on the school's website. This information will be posted on the school's website following this meeting or first thing tomorrow. It's being recorded in a number of ways, but one is on your local cable access, and that'll be posted. It's not being live streamed, but it will be posted, I'm told, tomorrow. The PowerPoint will be there. Any other additional handout that we'll have later in the meeting will be there as well. So this information. Most importantly, the second half of this meeting is going to be live polling. It's poll everywhere. It's kind of like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and you poll the audience and the bar graphs and all that. For those of your folks that couldn't be here tonight or couldn't join us tonight, are going to be looking at it online later, we will be posting that same survey on the school website as well. So they can participate in that manner. And another caveat, we're going to present quite a bit of information about tonight. There's quite a bit of numbers. If you're the kind of person who would like to just kind of sit on that information, come back and revisit it and look at it, and you'd rather not take the poll with us tonight, but participate and wait and take it online, you're welcome to do that as well. A couple of other notes on this. We're here we want to capture insights from everyone in the room. So our polling later in this process is intended to capture insights from everyone, to make sure that we get every piece of information we can to create key takeaways. And the one final note that I'll make tonight is that, and I'll revisit this in a moment, no final decisions have been made in regard to these boundary adjustments. We're here to gather insights from you, gather inputs, and try to figure out the best way forward that provides an equal opportunity for all the students in your district in regards to these boundary adjustments. So let's get started. All right. Just a quick team rundown. As mentioned, my name is Dr. Lance Richards. I'm what they like to call a recovering superintendent from southern Indiana near Louisville, Kentucky, 33 plus years in public education. With us tonight are Danny Dominguez, Maya Rao, and Cameron Arsenault, and they're going to be with us throughout the meeting. We'll also be here afterwards, so if you have any specific questions or any specific comments you want to share with us individually, please feel free to come up to us afterwards. We'll be glad to kind of talk through some of the process if you have some more granular questions for us at that time. A lot of the questions always surround, well, who is MGT? Why are you here? Why were you chosen to be a part of this process? MGT is a company that has done well over 400 of these projects. We are quite literally subject matter experts in this area. And these are tough conversations to be had. And it's our goal in this process to help you with the information, to provide you with the insights so that you can have informed conversations about it and can understand or at least appreciate the challenges that your school system faces. A few of the districts we've worked with, we've also worked with the Milwaukee Public Schools. We work with large districts, small districts in this conversation. And it is a nationwide conversation we're having in regards to school districts, in terms of demographic analysis, in terms of districts, in terms of growth versus decline, all of those conversations. So just a quick breakdown. We're going to talk about the methodology, talk about the creation and the analysis, some of the forecast factors, your district forecast. We're going to share some boundary options tonight to gather your insights on those, and then we're, of course, going to have our poll everywhere. If you want to participate in our polling, you can scan this QR code. You can also go to pollev.com/MGT, and Danny will revisit this moment. We'll put this up again in just a moment, so you don't have to just capture it now. Or you can also do texting to MGT3. You can text MGT3 to 22333. And we also have, I know there's a lot to this, we also have Chromebooks in the back. So if you don't want to participate on your phone, and the phone does work very well. If you don't want to use your phone, there's some Chromebooks in the back. When we get to that point, just raise your hand and we'll provide you with a Chromebook. Pardon? Pardon? All right, we'll revisit. All right, so just kind of our overall approach, kind of our approach to this process, our approach to the work here with Hudson, our approach nationally when we take on these projects. So we look at where we are. We look at what do we know. We look at data validation. We look at bringing in the numbers and making sure and verifying those numbers. Our work is very front-end heavy, and I have another slide that kind of leans into that. But we're all about, on the front end, making sure that our information is valid. From your community, from your district, making sure that the numbers we work with are valid in order to make the projections that we have going forward. And the question becomes always, where do we want to be? Kind of that model review. What is it? What do we have? What's our building inventory? What are our capacities? What are the challenges we're seeing in terms of where do we want to be? And what have we heard? That's tonight. Community feedback. Gathering information, bringing forward some models, bringing forward some options, bringing forward some information and sharing the process, and then gathering your insights. We're going to be back again in 2 weeks after we gather these insights, when we tweak the models again, tweak the boundary maps again, and then we're going to come back and present and share again and capture more insights then. But again, what have we heard and what is our best path forward? Now, the key points here, promoting transparency. Your board, your district is very much wanting you to see the same information you're going to see. This is a key point. There's no information, there's no secret amount of information out there. There's no additional information out there. These key components and these things that we're bringing to you tonight is the information, are the factors that your board is working with going forward. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up. There we go. Notified, no decision's been made. We're here to educate and activate community members and create informed decision makers. I call it the elevator speech. What we're wanting is for you, because you're in school, you're going to go away with homework. What we're wanting is for you to go back, take this information, share it, good, bad, or otherwise, share this information, have conversations around this information so that everyone can better understand the challenges going forward. So, we talked about it being front-loaded. We can also call it cake baking, because when you're baking a cake, you want to make sure your ingredients are exactly right, because you know the end product will be garbage if not. So, similarly, in this process, when we're out gathering parcel data about redevelopment, when we're out gathering birth rates, when we're out gathering student enrollment data going back 4 years to bring that information forward, it's critical that our information is accurate in working this forward. So some people act like, well, are concerned about a rushed process. Like, well, how can you gather this information tonight and bring this information forward and reshare it again in 2 weeks? Well, the key element around that is that we've done the front end work. So once we have the formulas, once we have the information in place, it's easy for us to kind of come in and adjust and reconfigure as long as the inputs are correct. So we've done a lot of work on the front end in making sure that our information is correct. So this is kind of how the cake is baked, or preferably maybe how the sausage is ground, if you prefer that analogy. So in looking at this, we looked at current and historical student data, so in historic birth rates. And so we brought this information, so birth rates come into birth factors, and that leads straight to kindergarten kids. So how many kids were born? How many kids show up on the first day of school? Mobility factors. Mobility deals with the number of kids in and out after they join you in school, and we're going to have a chart that relates to that. So how many kids come into first kindergarten, stay with you to first, stay to second, matriculate all the way through high school? And there are a lot of things that weigh into that, and we'll talk more about that. Student yield factors come back around to development. Now, you don't have a lot of apartments or townhomes here. Most of your homes are single-family homes, so all of our data comes in and is derived from single-family. You don't have enough apartments for us to make any valid calculations on those. And so we're looking at kindergarten classes, we're looking across all your student cohorts, we're looking at planned residential development, and that creates our forecast going forward. So, a lot of questions around development. Are you factoring in development? Are you factoring in development? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely, because that is a key component to the amount of housing stock you have in terms of the number of students that are going to be in your schools going forward. All right, so spatial data creation and analysis. And spatial is exactly as it sounds, the space in which we occupy, and looking at the ground and looking at attendance areas and looking backwards with student data. So we've got a heat map here on the left. We're going to provide you with, we have 241 study areas. So we broke down all of your student population. We kind of start with elementary boundaries, work our way back into these study areas, and we created 241 study areas of 25 students or less, right? 25 students or less. And we then looked at residential development, factored that in, all right, and we brought back through into the spatial analysis, and we'll have some color coding to kind of help you better quantify and understand that. So we're looking, again, at the attendance areas. We look back 4 years. We come forward into the study areas, envelop or incorporate the residential development, and then create the analysis. Historic student analysis. Again, I mentioned we're kind of going back 4. So if you take a, I don't want to walk in front of the machine. Sorry. Does my pointer work? Let's see. Yeah, okay, good. So if you take a look at this, all right, you can kind of see we're starting out at 2022, and we're carrying this across, all right, into the current. So these are your enrollment trends for all of your schools here, okay? And so basically, you're tracking this difference, and you can kind of gather your trend lines. As we carry that over just into the grade, now this is school-based, so this is grade level based, okay? And what you can see again as you track this across, 5,500, 5,400, 5,300, just a little over 5,000 carrying forward. And you don't, the most basic demographic analysis is basically graduation out, kindergarten in. So if you take a look, even if you look at no other information, residential, nothing. If you look at nothing else but graduating out, kindergarten in. So you got 492 versus 393, 461 versus 365, 482 versus 321. So you can get, and then you can gather your trend line. So what we're showing is that in 2022, you were above 5,500. And at present day, you're a little over 5,000. So again, looking at these historic student data analysis, and this is from 22 to 25, this is present, okay, to the present. These are, again, those 241 study areas broken out and the color coding. So as you see down here on the bottom, the blue is growth. Purple shows decline. And so, and you can also kind of, with this, we'll have another slide on this, but with this you can also see a little bit of population density. The study areas had to be bigger in order to capture the 25 students, and so as you get into the more rural areas, you can see that the study area had to be bigger. So this, again, this is historic. This is the 4-year back coming forward. And this is student, now this is the heat map. So this is the student density of fall 2025. And so as you see here with the blazing sun here at the corner there of Rock Elementary Zone, that is the most densely populated area you have in regards to student population, in regards to your student population and tracking them. And again, you would expect this given that given the size of the condensed nature of the study areas here, when you bring that forward into the heat maps, it kind of tracks forward. All right, so your attendance matrix in regards to the elementary schools, because, we're here to talk about elementary. So this shows how many resident students are in each attendance area. Now, this is important to note. We're talking about the students, regardless of what school they go to, these are your resides students. These are where the students live in regards to their elementary attendance area. So as you see here, you got your grade range there. At Holton, you have 203 students that live within the boundary. 198 of those students attend Holton, and you can see 2 are at Hudson Prairie, 2 are at North Hudson, 1 are over at Willow River. for a variety of reasons. These are really solid numbers overall in regards to your attendance zones and areas and resident attendance. And your open enrolled students are just that. Those are kids that are from outside the district that come to your schools through the state's open enrolled process. Okay? So again, tracking this forward as you look at all the differing schools, let's use Rock Creek, 373, 373, how about that? 373, you can see that 3 of them are at Hudson Prairie, 5, 8, 353 of those students attend, and then 10 are at Willow River. So as you take, and this also kind of gives you, on the bottom here, the total resident student numbers as it tracks forward into these schools. And the current number of students. So the current number of students this year, as of 10/8 of the October count, that's in nationally, October is the big count day for schools. 10/8, you had 1,852 resident students living within a boundary. All right. So I'm taking a look at your overall enrollment analysis, and this is kind of taking a look at your schools, their capacities, the residents versus actual enrollment, and how these numbers break out in terms of your resident students and that kind of thing. But kind of the key takeaways on this slide are your school capacities. So Holton is at 294. They have 203 students. Their current utilization is at 69%. Their total enrollment is at 218, and their overall utilization is at 74. So looking at Hudson Prairie, 588 capacity, 457 enrollment at about 77% enrollment. And you can carry this on down, 441, 267, 60%, 588, 349 at 59%, 588 at 370 at 62.9%, and then Willow River at 441, with 276 and 62.6% utilization. So overall, if you break all that out, the district has about 66% utilization when you're taking the total number of students, and roughly, at present day, 1,000 elementary seats that are empty in that tracking. So, and this is, again, your enrollment analysis. You got your resident, and you have your resident student transfers there. And you can see, based on, at the far corner there's always questions around open enrollment, but the total number of outside students within those schools. But our key takeaways here at the bottom. So forecast factors. So beginning, birth rates. And so this gets a little bit granular, but our baseline year is this year. So that number is going to be 100. So that's our baseline year. Then we're going to look back 4 years. So 4 years ago, 5 years ago off of 2020 to 2015, your birth rate at that point was 110.5%. So it was 10.5% higher than the baseline going back. So what this tells us is your birth rates in the 5 years prior were higher. And as we track those birth rates forward, they trend downward as we carry that number on down. Now, we're tracking these back to the zip codes. These are kids that were born within your district. It's not kids that were born at a hospital and live in a different zip code. This tracks back to the birth mother's zip code. So these are students that would show up in your school if they stay the 5 years. So what we know is that, 15 becomes 20 in terms of enrollment. So we're always kind of taking a look at this and what's it going to present for us 5 years down the road. What percentage of those kids are going to show up and cross your threshold for kindergarten? And so, in all honesty, your births in the area have been declining coming out of the recession, falling below 300 births in 2020 and continuing forward. And there's a lot of, smaller families. We all know that we're producing smaller families. I was one of three kids. Today, a three-child, that's not even right grammar. A home that has 3 children in it is a relatively large family in these times. Not to get to my age, but we had a lot of families when I was growing up that had the 3, 4, and 5 kids, and that's almost unheard of in this part of the country. It's not regular in this. Well, and people, no, but you're the outlier in many ways. So the point I'm trying to make is that we've got declining birth rates. We also have delayed childbirth. And my own family's emblematic of that. I mean, those of us that have children, have raised children, most of us had our children in our early to mid, maybe late 20s primarily. And now what we've seen is there's a delayed childbirth. And and I call them kids, young people are having kids later. Those things impact the birth rates going forward. All right, so mobility factor. Someone, earlier we had a conversation about mobility factors. So here's your chart. Okay, so these mobility factors, there's a lot going on here. Okay, what it shows you though is when kids come in, how many kids show up then year after year after year. And so as you're looking at Holton and you're tracking that number forward, so that K to 1, K is a 1. You can think of this in terms of 100% as well. But when they show up at K, that's the established number. It's 1. And so we're working off that 1 going forward. So basically, you've lost a student coming into first grade if the number was 100. And you lose basically a kid or two every year as they track forward into 5th and 6th. Now, what you're going to note that's kind of that we talked about a lot in this district is the number of students that kind of come back to you into high school, coming out of the parochial schools, coming back into the public schools. And then you'll notice this 11 or 12 number is a little higher. That captures some of the students that are late graduates that come back into their cohort. So that's why that number's higher. But the mobility rates, to be honest with you, they don't show any growth in existing neighborhoods. And this kind of points back to folks moved here because they wanted to live in Hudson, high quality of life, great neighborhoods, nice rural environment in parts of your district, great place to live and raise your kids. But they move here and they stay. And their kids graduate and they're still here. The district that I graduated high school from many, many moons ago has that same problem. There's not any housing stock, and my dad still lives there in the house that I grew up in, and they would very much like for him to sell it so a young family could come in and bring in some kids for the school district. But there's just kind of this backlog of housing needs. So what you're seeing here, there's just no real growth in existing neighborhoods. The high school ratios, as you see a slight gain as you get out there, and you also see that return of private and parochial schools. But we're looking at 4 years of historic mapped student data. So again, you can see how it's applied there. The 199 shows 90, but then that tracks forward. So, at first grade, that new number is 99, then it's going to be, that's the new one, and it tracks forward, so it shows a decline. So there's a lot that's going on here. What we see in some districts is a growth of more blue on this screen because of available housing stock. Yes, ma'am. 4 years, looking back. All right. I mentioned before, you don't have a lot of apartments, virtually any to speak of, in terms of larger developments or townhomes. So your bread and butter single-family detached homes. So we always a lot of people talk about, well, we got this development, we got this development, we got this development. And it used to be that you could see rates. If you look at this, you can see you got a single-family home, and you can kind of see how many kids is that home going to generate based on the tracking of new housing stock, based on the enrollment surrounding those homes. So we're able to pinpoint the house, pinpoint the students generated out of that house, and calculate this number. So if you look in the city of Hudson, you've got about, 0.28. 3.14 for the town of St. Joseph, town of Hudson, which is, in my part of the world, you call that a township, 0.434, a little higher number, and then 3.3 for the district. So what we're saying with these numbers is 100 units will generate 33 students across K through 12. The challenge of that, I had a development of about 80 homes that was coming into my school district, and we're really looking forward to those homes coming on because we needed the growth desperately. And what we found is it didn't really impact our elementary very much because there was so few students across the spectrum. So again, those 100 units, and we've tracked. I'll have a chart here. I may answer your questions in just a second. I'll have a chart here that tracks back to the residential developments, and we're tracking those on developments of 10 or more. But I'll reference that in just a moment. Yes, ma'am. North Hudson and Troy. So they have to meet a certain threshold of number of homes, of development, of new development. So the short answer is yes, but they're not delineated on this chart. All right, residential, well, speak of the devil. Residential, maybe I should have started with this one. Note to self, show this first. All right, so these are the residential developments. Maya and another one of our, you saw Lauren's picture at the beginning here, drove the entire district, mapping out the residential development, working with county and town officials to make sure that township and town officials to make sure that we were able to track back. And again, it's units or developments that are 10 or more. So if you have a family member that has some ground and you're able to build that second home on it, that's great, but that doesn't quantify itself as a residential development per se. So, and again, we go out and take a look at these places because a lot of times we'll go to places and the developer will say, we've got 100 new homes coming online. And we get there and there's no infrastructure. The county really hasn't even approved the platting yet of that same development. And so we have to lay eyes on it. And we have to make sure that it's actually in process and planned. I will tell you this also, though. When you saw the forecast data and you talked about the things like that, residential development is one of those things that can actually change your math a little bit down the road. So if your community, your district, if the housing stock has some kind of impact, if more multifamily homes are brought in, if the plat or the allowable build is the smaller amount of acreage or whatever, those types of things can impact large development. But you know, the real challenge, especially when you get out into the rural areas, is if you want some kind of high density, that involves sewers and some other infrastructure that is an entire different conversation that I'm not advocating for. I've been in conversation around rural sewers and that kind of thing. I'm just saying it involves more infrastructure that may be in place that the situation can handle. So again, this residential development, these are the ones we've tracked. These are single family detached. You have a little bit at Delta Rose, I think it's Arbella. My distance contact isn't working there. Bella Rose Apartments, phase 2 is coming online. And you got a little bit down here with the Bernadette. But not a lot, for a district of this size, not a lot of apartment housing stock. Yes, ma'am. The UU property, is that approved?
That's one of the questions. I think it's still in the annexation process because it's like either part of the city or not part of the city. I think Nick knows more information about that.
So we plotted it because it's a planned development. Either way, it would provide additional housing stock.
Yeah, typically, because we want to make sure we're capturing any developments that might happen. Typically, once it still needs to be approved, we'll face those same kind of delays.
Along the way, right. Now, it would not be factored directly into probably years 1 or 2, so it's going to be one of those that potentially comes online farther down in the mix. But I don't know the specifics around the annexation. Yeah, no,
A little bit, like when I was looking at these houses, some of them started at like 400, a lot of them started at 700, 800.
yeah. Yeah, and that, to be honest with you, you know, we talk about that single family home, but if it's a $700,000 single family home, that's not a starter home for young families. And so that can be a challenge as well. Yes, ma'am. Hang on, what's your answer there?
We're primarily looking at either like city agendas, things like that, online resources. There's things that may be missed in this, but you I mean, like, we went back and forth also.
So I go back to, though, when you get to that, she's mentioning, for those of you that couldn't hear, there's some development of approximately 22 homes that may not be captured into this map directly. However, when you go back to those 22 homes and you do the math that surrounds those homes, you're talking about plus or minus 10 kids, 8 kids. So it's not enough to dramatically shift. We do our best to capture all of the active developments and all those homes that are coming into production and to forecast when they would come onto line so that we can make sure we bake that into the forecast that we've got coming up. So looking at your forecasted resident students, again, kind of that 4-year look back in our base of 2025, and this is kind of a gradient chart. Basically, the pink represents lower, the blue represents larger. It's kind of your key takeaway here. But as you do this, I mean, I think your big note here is that, look, your larger numbers are in the past. This gradient of pink is washing kind of down across the chart, and you're going to see that reflected here momentarily in some of the other charts that we're going to bring forward. So as you look at your base year there, and you can kind of track that across. So if you take the 295, if you take this 295 and 24 and just kind of trace that along and where we're going to see it might play out as it comes across. But the big, again, kind of that big factor goes to 12 decay, 12 decay, 12 decay, 12 decay. And as the declining enrollment impacts your elementaries, that kind of comes into your middle school, and that eventually makes its way into your cohorts at the high school. And so the key takeaway on this slide, again, is that as we project forward, we're seeing declining numbers. Now, I want to tell, there is an important caveat here when we talk about forecasting. These forecasts are very much like, not no different, but they're very much like your weather forecast. So if you've got, I know it's hard to imagine an outdoor party here, but let's imagine an outdoor party that you're planning 10 days from now. And the weather forecaster says, hey, it might rain in 10 days. You're going, all right, I'll pay attention to that. At 5 days, you begin to pay a little bit more attention. But at 3 days, if they say you're going to have a rain, you're going to bring the party indoors. So you're always looking for that refreshment about every 3 days of new information that may impact the final outcome. Similar for forecasting here. We feel great about our 3 to 5 year numbers, to be honest with you. We know very much that those numbers and those trend lines are going to be accurate. We know this because historically we've been accurate. Now, what we also know, though, is that other factors can come into play in that 5 years that may impact the trajectory slightly. But unless there's a wholesale change in terms of housing stock, in terms of the ability for families to purchase within your district, you don't have enough back-end development to offset the front-end kindergarten class sizes. And again, as you trace these numbers across, the 2022 numbers at 5260, as we trend this across, we're saying in, basically 10 years from present day, you're going to be at about 4,200 students in total. And this is just, again, a graphic representation of that same information, looking back at 2022, carrying that trend line as we see it across the differing grades. And again, what you also see here is that as the elementaries kind of work their way through the middle schools, you can see that 9 through 12 bar begin to kind of come down. You can also kind of recognize, I think one of the questions about the elementaries plateauing is, have we seen it plateau? It's just beginning to plateau at the elementary level, and those are the numbers they're going to track on into your secondary. And I will also tell you this, your district had different forecasted information from a different, I shouldn't say different, they had additional that's not the correct way to, can you erase that from the tape? It wasn't, I'm sorry. Your district had other forecasted demographic information in regard to student enrollment. And part of our job was to not take a look at that data, to do our own analysis, because they wanted to make sure, they wanted an additional amount of information to make sure that the information they're working with could carry them forward in terms of making sure these decisions are right for your school community, not just today, but going into the future, making those tough decisions today that they don't have to revisit this in the coming years. And so these numbers, by and large, do support that earlier work. One other question, or I think the question around development. So some of these questions always are, well, did you factor in development? We're always talking about development. Well, we did, and here's where you would be with no development. So the light blue is the trend line of, based on the current projects that are in play, when we're anticipating them to come online, it's that you can see that delineation of about 178 homes across that window. Again, more important to look at it kind of in that 31, 32 range, but you can see the delineation. If we don't factor in development, that's where you're going to be. If we do have development, that's what we're forecasting. And so, and you can kind of see that plateau as we cross the 2030s into the early 2030s, kind of plateauing of that number. So again, similar information here. You can see it in terms of the forecasted resident students, again, working with the resident student population, kids that live in your district. And so you see your grade ranges, you see your current, and you can see the forecasted resident students within that school and the 5-year and 10-year change. And I'll have a graph for this in just a moment that will be representative of this. So in looking at this information, let me grab something here. Thank you. And looking at this information, what you're seeing, especially if you track it over to the 5-year change and 10-year change, well, let's just focus on the 5-year for now. Across the board, except at Rivercrest, across the board, what we're anticipating is declining student enrollment, and it was reflected in that prior chart as well, but this kind of breaks it down granularly into the individual buildings. And we'll have a little bit more on that here. So here, again, graphic representation of that same information. And I think this is probably a little easier to digest. And again, all of these slides will be on the web tomorrow. So you'll be able to download these, take a look at them, and be able to share these with other folks and push them forward. So in looking at this, you can kind of just see 0 being 0, Rivercrest having some of the growth, and the other schools. And again, you see what happens at your secondary levels as we begin to move forward into the years. All right, so some key takeaways here. Forecasted resident students, and this is students who lived in the district, of course, are enrolled in your schools, and this is just in those grade bands, K-5, 6-8, 9-12, 6-12, and kind of carrying those forward. So district-wide student counts are projected to decline, stabilizing at about 4,200, in the early 2030s. K through 5 student forecasts will decline initially, eventually stabilizing. They're going to stabilize earlier at about 1,750. 6-8 will decline as the smaller elementaries come through. They're going to fall below 1,000 students, but really they say 900 here. 9 through 12 again, as those things matriculate through from the younger grades, you're going to be reaching about 1,400 resident students in 2032. So this going back now we're back to our 241 study areas, and we're looking at the 5-year net change. And so it's kind of hard to understand. The orange and red represent moderate student losses. So we have an increase of orange and red that indicates the student losses. An increase of orange and red that leads to a decrease. We have fewer light and dark greens that show some moderate growth, where newer housing stock and through records and real estate, what we can track in terms of housing turnover, because there's a cadence that comes to housing turnover as well for a district, especially a district as large as your district is. Congratulations, you have a great community. People want to live here. Congratulations, you have a great community. People want to live here and stay. And so that impacts schools in this way. So overall, the pattern reflects a shift in enrollment landscape, localized dips and gains. Again, that's why we have the study areas. And this supports the overall forecast from the prior study of an enrollment decline over the next 5 years. And so so building these out and coming forward, we have the key takeaways, and there's a lot going on here. And I know that everyone loves to have a PowerPoint presentation where the presenter reads the slide to you, but there's a lot of important information on this slide. So again, overall enrollment decline, about 12% decrease as we head out toward 2035. We use a land use methodology. I know some people want to get into like T9s and T-scores and all these other very specific statistical analysis. Our math is pretty straightforward. We're looking at your ground and how it's being used. If it's a school, is it a shopping mart? Is it a farm? How is the land used? What's the use of the land? And we're going to look at your historic data, your birth rates, your mobility in and out, planned residential development across those study areas to develop that forecast. So your primary driver, again, is falling birth rates, smaller families, delayed in childbirth, fewer younger families within your community in terms of filling up the kindergarten. Okay, so your birth rates are statistically significant, have been below 300 annually since 2020. Your new housing impact is limited. It's there, thank God it's there. It's not enough to backfill. It's not enough to backfill the declining birth rates. You're going to have the declines in the secondary steepest because those elementary students are going to matriculate through. You're going to see them showing up in the middles and highs as we make our way forward. Elementary is going to stabilize at about 1,750 students after initial declines. Again, it won't reach the high schools, though, until they make their way through into the 2030s. And so you have facility underutilization. You have roughly 1,000 elementary seats as it sits right now, representing 66% utilization at that level. And so there is a strategic imperative behind that. As responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars, you have to be representative of everyone. We want to do what's best for our kids. We want to do what's best for our school community. But we have folks that don't have students in schools. There's only a limited number of dollars out there. I liken it to a jar of Skippy peanut butter. You only have so many pieces of bread it can be spread on. Those dollars only go so far. And so with shrinking enrollment, that leads to facility underutilization, and right-sizing facilities and adjusting attendance boundaries kind of honor the commitment of your taxpayers in the district. Look, in our current marketplace of public schools, students are dollars. There's an associated dollar amount associated with every student. Yes, ma'am. Sure. So that is exactly what we talk about when we talk about that mobility rate. That is absolutely baked into that. So what happens in those cases are many times an older family, God forbid something happens to a family, the kids come in, they have to sell that home. Most folks, my 83-year-old father being one of these, they want to stay in their home as long as they can. So they hold on to that property and they keep it for as long as they can. You have housing turnover. We're able to forecast that housing turnover. You have a certain number of folks that are that age already. And so that's why it also comes back to it's important to revisit this information in 3 years. But there's nothing in our forecast, there's nothing that you have that indicates to us that your housing stock the amount of available homes is going to dramatically rise. You're not so demographically lopsided that you have 30% of your population at that 70-plus age range that might be willing to sell a home. It kind of goes back to this earlier problem of you have a great community. People live here, and they're here for the long haul because they enjoy it. That downtown Hudson is awesome. That whole little area and that whole vibe that's down there is just terrific. And so people move here, and they can get the best of all the worlds here. You've got rural, you've got kind of a little bit of a small city vibe going on. You can kind of live a little bit into the suburbs and have access to those areas, and you're just across the river from a larger metropolitan area. So this place is a sweet spot in terms of that. But your challenge is, kind of back to your thing, kind of leads back to what she talked about over here. Even those older homes in this district are at a pretty good price point. especially if somebody comes in and grabs it and flips it. So again, it kind of comes back to there's just not enough turnover in that stock, and there's not enough new housing stock that's going to offset these numbers in terms of declining inputs in terms of kindergarten. There's just not enough there. Hey, do me a favor. I don't mind. We will stay here as long as you want afterwards and be glad to get this conversation. But I need to kind of move on into our examples here. Boundary considerations. All right, so boundary considerations. Now, there are other guiding principles that can be brought into here that really aren't part of your calculation. So the board took a hard look at, this was kind of the board's work. The board took a hard look at, all right, what are going to be our key drivers behind these decisions? What are we going to charge MGT, more specifically Cameron and Maya, with in terms of taking the analysis and looking at all the deep bench? We've got a lot of folks that work at MGT and work in these areas. And we're going to look at transportation. We're going to look at minimizing impact to students. Try to do this and impact the fewest number as you can. You have to identify major barriers. You've got kind of a smallish, largish lake here in the middle of things. You've got to factor interstates in. You've got to factor these areas, parks, all those kinds of things. We don't want to create, you don't really have any island zones now. We don't want to create a pocket where we grab these kids out by Holton and bring them all the way across the district to go somewhere else. You want contiguous bounds. You want them to be connected. You want to consider your neighborhoods in terms of your larger communities, your subdivisions, and those kinds of things, these zones and these pockets of housing throughout your district. And look, we're here to talk about capacity and utilization. Now, the challenge to all these is they pull on each other. This is just like the lotto drawing that you see, or the Powerball when those balls are bouncing around, because you're going to see some of our models and you go, well, that doesn't really work on neighborhoods, but it might work on natural barriers. Well, that doesn't really work on minimizing impact, but it makes cohesive boundaries. It doesn't really work for transportation, but it balances the capacity and utilization. So what we have for you today is 3 examples of how this might work. And look, there's only so many ways you can slice this pizza. So we've done our best to give you some representative examples that you can kind of look at, analyze for yourself, give us some feedback. There are open-ended questions that are included here. So make sure that if you have something, if you have an insight, if you have a key takeaway, if you have a concern, it's got to get into this document so that we can quantify it. Because if you have that concern, and she has that concern, and he and they have that concern, then we can begin to quantify that and kind of bring that back and try to bake that into the cake. I am not here to tell you that we're going to get to the second meeting and we're going to give you another set of boundaries and we're going to have a whole kumbaya moment and we're all going to sing and hold hands. That's not going to happen. People are still going to be disappointed. People are still going to be unhappy. But what your board is trying to do is create a situation where we give you all the inputs, we give you all the understanding, we give you all the information they have to kind of help them in this process about making a tough decision going forward and making the decision that's right for all of the students within your school community. So having said that, let me jump forward here. Again, they bounce off one another, and this is kind of how we defined how your board spent some time on this, quantifying these guiding principles around transportation, around impact. And I want a key element here. Set long-term boundaries for 10 and 12 years. What you don't want to do as a community is have to come back and revisit this. What you don't want to do is disrupt the lives of your students in a later point because you've not done the work as adults should do on the front end. And I'll give you this one other important caveat. Your kids are going to be great either way. Kids are awesome. Kids are flexible. Kids are understanding. Kids are excited. And they're as excited and understanding about it as the important adults in their lives are. So your kids' attitude about this process is going to be a direct reflection of the conversations they have at home and the inputs that they have. And so I urge you in these conversations as we move forward, when your kids are excited, be excited for them, because this is a great opportunity for them as well. And it's upsetting, I get that, but your kids will be great because kids are great. So let's get on to this. So natural barriers, again, we talked about natural barriers, major roads. Avoiding island zones. We don't want to create this non-contiguous little puddle of housing that we just bus over here because we can. Again, neighborhood considerations. And again, balanced school capacity amongst all grade levels over time, keeping average sizes within, you have district class guidelines. And I know there's a lot of conversation out in your community about the guidelines, K through 2, that 18 to 22, 3 through 5, 22 to 27. We can't bring back to you a choice, then you can't staff it, because we have created a situation where the second grade is just this massive grade at this one school. And so what we had to do is also look at the enrollments in those grade levels as they play forward, and we're going to share this information, and how that would look at that 5 and 10 year mark. So we are absolutely doing this analysis with class sizes in mind, and making sure that we don't overload a given area with a given number. Now, 5 years down the road and you have this bumper crop of kindergartners at this one school and it overloads the school, I can't fix that. But we can, in going into this problem, we can't create a problem in terms of the boundary options that we give you. All right, I think at this point, these are your existing boundaries. I know we have a handout related to these boundaries. Do we want to give that out now, or do we want to wait and give that out at the end of the meeting? Huh? Yeah, it is related to the new boundaries, yes. You want to give that out at the end?
Yeah, I can give it out now.
Okay, so these are your existing boundaries in terms of your schools, in terms of what you have, the line, and you can see the kind of the pull out for your existing different color codings around your schools. And this is directly off your school website. So if you've gone to your school website, you would have seen, the Rivercrest, EP Rock, Hudson Prairie. And you can kind of see, especially around Willow River, how it kind of morphed out up next to the state park in order to capture students. And you can see, based on our currently enrolled, Holton is not a huge school, but it's got a big geographic footprint in order of just capturing those students in terms of creating a student population for that school. So the handouts that you're receiving relate to the boundary scenarios. And I know we should have had them. You're going to just stare at these right now. But stay with me, because these handouts actually relate to some of the later slides that are coming into this process. But a lot of the questions we know in advance stemmed around kind of that class size situation. What would that look based on the forecasted information? And for your friends that aren't here tonight, this is a big piece of paper, but it will also be posted on your school website. So we created scenarios: blue scenario, green scenario, and purple scenario. And you can and we're going to get into these individually, so don't think that this is it and we got to move on. So we're going to lean into each of these going forward so you can kind of see how they work. And again, these will be available widely tomorrow on the school website. So this is the green option. And specifically, we kind of looked at this based on the guiding principles. And again, those things are going to pull against each other. So we're doing our best to kind of balance those guiding principles in this model. It's prioritized to keeping neighborhoods together and minimizing student impact. So Holton is split roughly half between North and I'll have specific numbers to this in just a moment, so don't worry. Is roughly half between North Hudson and half over to Hudson Prairie. Willow Grove is split, there's a place near my house called Willow Grove, and I have called this Willow Grove in my brain. And I said to myself, don't call it Willow Grove, don't call it Willow Grove, and here I am calling it Willow Grove. Willow River is split that roughly the city of Houston zoned into Rock Elementary, and the town or the township of Hudson goes and zoned into Hudson Prairie. And you can kind of see how that breaks out into that zone. And then Rivercrest Elementary takes in all the areas south of County Road North that are currently zoned to Hudson Prairie. It also takes in the Red Cedar Canyon neighborhood, which is this little circle, this little section right there into the EP Rock. So you're looking at this and you go, wait a minute, more schools are impacted than just the two schools in question, okay? Well, it's a domino effect, because the neighboring school doesn't have enough capacity just to absorb Holton, or the neighboring schools don't have just enough capacity to absorb Willow River. So there is kind of a domino effect as we come down and we kind of travel east in these maps, okay? And so the estimated impacted students is listed there on the bottom, 191. That's the current population of Holden, 240 current population at Willow River, and then 124 students elsewhere as we balance this utilization. And we'll have specifics to that in just a moment. So this gives you kind of where that would be based on the new school of residence, the number of students, where they go, and the number of, and where they end up. So if you're looking at Holton, 65 to Hudson Prairie, 126 to North Hudson. As you come down to Willow River, 82 to Hudson Prairie, 158 to Rock. And then you've got, again, you can see where some of the kids had to come out of Hudson Prairie to create space. Some of the kids had to come out of Rock to create space. And so you got your total number of students impacted here at the bottom at 148, 126, 115, and 167 as the total number in and out in a given school. All right, so that's the green boundary option. And the dotted lines here on the screen are the existing school boundaries, so you can kind of see where they were and where they're going. All right, so this is purple. Now this, when we say this is designed to prioritize creating most efficient boundaries, so these are the most cohesive school boundaries. They follow the logical road paths, they follow the barriers. So these are kind of the most efficient, you know, the distance between two lines is two places is a straight line. We tried to be more in that regard in terms of efficient boundaries while minimizing student impact. Again, Holton goes to North Hudson and Hudson Prairie along County Road 5 or V5, with most students now attending Hudson Prairie. So a little bit of a different shift here. Willow River in this model goes to 3 schools, okay? Areas in the town of Hudson move to Hudson Prairie, just like in the other one, while the city of Hudson splits along St. Croix and the railroad at North Hudson Elementary and EP Rock. And then Rivercrest takes in all areas south of I-94. So we talked about natural barriers or roads and that kind of thing. And those they take those students in to create space, and those students that are currently zoned at Hudson Prairie. And so 191, 240, again, I mean, these are the enrollments of those currently at those schools. And then 107, in this model, 107 students from other schools are impacted in the purple scenario. And so here's the purple numbers. Again, you can see, in this case, 106 at Hudson Prairie, 85 over to North Hudson. Hudson Prairie in this model now shifts 107 to Rivercrest. As you come down, Willow River goes 88, 30, and 122 as it's divided between Hudson Prairie, North Hudson, and Rock. And as you carry this down, you can see the total numbers of students impacted at 194, 115, 107, and 122. So this is the purple boundary in terms of its cohesion. And look, and I won't pretend, there are drawbacks to all of the scenarios here in terms of what we're looking at. And so our charge here is to kind of honor those guiding principles and create the best scenarios we can. And we're not wed to any of these. So if you've got a better idea, please, dear God in heaven, share it with us. We'll be happy to incorporate that and make it work. And I know some of you are going, oh, no, really, you're not really. No, seriously. We did this work, Danny and I did just a year ago on the East Coast in Virginia, and the community input actually shifted some of the boundaries because there were communities and connections and roads and things that had not been taken into consideration. So those conversations can be had, and those inputs are important in the polling, whether you participate in the poll tonight or you participate online. So this is the blue scenario. Prioritize balancing areas of growth. So it factors in a little bit more kind of going forward down in the bottom portion of your district in terms of some of the future growth. So Holton and Willow River are split similar to the green scenario, so there's not a lot of difference there. The big difference in the blue scenario is that Rivercrest takes in areas south of I-94, as you see down there, and east of Carmichael Road. And now those students are currently zoned to EP Rock and Hudson Prairie, while the Rock Elementary takes in areas to the east of I-94 and County Road UU. So Hudson Prairie Elementary retains the rural areas in the southeast corner along Kinney Road and County Road U. So there's a little more in terms of division here, a little more in terms of following some of the roads. In terms of total number, 191, 240, but again, in this one, it impacts more students at 177 students from the other schools as we kind of create that domino effect in order to balance the areas of growth. So, and then in the blue option you can see here, Holton and to the Hudson Prairie and North Hudson, very similar. Willow River at the bottom, 82 and 158, very much like the green option. Your big differences here, Hudson Prairie 48 and 37, and again Rock Elementary at 92. All right, so this is an important slide. This is the estimated 26, 27 students by attendance areas, and these are the estimated impacted. So when you're looking at the schools, you know, again, you're going to have 191 and 240 at Willow River, but then you can see, like in the green option, 58 existing students at Hudson Prairie are impacted. In the purple option, 107 students are impacted, and in the blue option, 85 are impacted. And again, North Hudson 9, Rivercrest is 0 in all models, and then Rock is either 57 or 92 over across the way in the blue model. So this is the total. These are the impacted students of the elementaries that would be in terms of their current school of residence versus their new school of residence across the top. And that kind of is where your handout comes into play, because you can kind of see, all right, if they go, what do the class sizes look like? What are we anticipating in terms of staffing if you're a school employee, and that kind of thing. So, and this is kind of the, look, we're here to talk about capacity and utilization because you have excess capacity. So we're looking at utilization across that 5 and 10 year window, right? Next year, and then the 5 and 10 year window. And so as you look at the differing options, you can see, you know, in any of the options, any of them are viable in terms of percentage utilization. Yes, Hudson Prairie comes in at 90 in the first year, but then in the first scenario it goes 90, 80, 78, 90, 77, 76, and then 88, 80, and 80 across the top there on the blue option. And of course you can see what happens with Rock in terms of in Rivercrest in terms of, well, really Rock in terms of, you know, kind of holding back some capacity in case of growth. And then kind of looking at the purple option here, as you kind of carry that across. I mean, you look at Rock and the differing options, 80, 78, 79 in green, 82, 84, 85, so very consistent in the purple. And then in the other one, 79, then going to 75 and 75. So this kind of deals directly to the boundaries, the capacities, the utilizations in terms of the current next year's, and that's in your chart that you have, and then carrying forward. Yes, ma'am. I don't know what my guidelines I gave you or the classroom guidance. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I can answer that. So we do have the ability at North Hudson in the green scenario and the purple scenario to add another section if we needed to, and that would drop it below the guidelines quite a bit, so that it can be added another section. Yes.
So these numbers are directly derived from what is happening next year in terms of current student count, and if that count were to carry forward on those projections, so it doesn't preclude additional staff.
Yep. So for option, which option? Yeah, it could. I mean, it could change the savings by up to about $100,000. Yeah. So if we added one section to get them to get it under, so it'd be about $100,000 difference. Yep.
Do me a favor. Capture it. You're not talked beforehand. Catch us after this, and Cameron and Maya can kind of talk through some of that. All right. So here's your capacity and utilizations, and then jump. Oh, it's Danny time. So, and don't worry, as we make our way through these polls, we'll bring these options back in so that you can kind of see them and revisit them. So at this time, if you do want a Chromebook, raise your hand and we'll make sure we'll get you a Chromebook. Otherwise, if you don't mind, if you can scan the QR code. Don't forget, though, that at the end of this night, you have homework. I need you to go back and talk to your friends about this, good, bad, or otherwise. Talk to them, make them aware, encourage them to participate in the online poll, encourage them to go and watch this wonderful video that will be posted on local cable access and YouTube, and most importantly, to visit the website, see the PowerPoint, and participate in the online survey. All right, they're having some issues. You're only going to see the first question. Join presentation.
You're gonna wanna rescan.
So when you scan the QR code, it goes up to page not found. Then there's a button to click home. You click home and it brings you to this, and you have to enter in your presenter's name.
MGT3. MGT3, yes. If you're getting that no user found link, there should be a home icon or a home page. And then if it takes you to join presenters page, it's MGT3 that you're going to put after that backslash. So sorry for the extra step there. Yes, well, I'm going to put the PowerPoint back up here to show the boundaries when we get to that point. And go ahead, Cameron.
And then within the survey, there's also a link to view these each of these scenarios as in a web app that allows you to type in your address and see where you fall under different scenarios.
So if you did hear that from Cameron, again, this poll is going to be available later on as a survey that you can take freely. It's not going to be live polled. You can take it at your discretion. And then there's also an address finder within that survey that allow you to actually see where you line up in each of the scenarios if you put your own address or any address of that matter within the district. So again, this is not going to be the last time you give input. You can take this and you can take the survey if you so choose. If you don't have all the information that you want to make a decision on some of these things, again, please don't feel like you have to make an answer choice at this time. MGT3.
Yeah, we type that in and then it just brings you to waiting for it to begin.
Okay, let me restart it real quick. Try now. All right. Sorry. It is a live poll, so I have to actually start it. And I apologize for the smaller screen. So for this first question is just more of an attendance question. We just kind of want to see who's in the room. Obviously, the first two are pretty obvious. If you're a parent or guardian of a district student, district staff member. If there are any students that are invested in this or interested in this as well that are here, we also want to know that. And then if you're a community member, obviously we know that parents fall into that. These might be business leaders. These might be people who don't have students in the district, but obviously are very invested in what happens with the district, so we want to make sure that that's an option as well. And then any other stakeholder that might be here and wanting to participate in the poll. So I'll just give a second to get that in. These are for our staff members. If you're an employee of Hudson School District, we just want to know where you work. You can put multiple schools if you work at multiple locations, but again, we just want to have like more of an attendance question here. And the next one will be about parents of students, which schools your students go to. Say again? No, we'll be able to get that in the survey. These are just for the employees here. And then our last attendance question, If you have a child or a student that attends school in the Hudson School District, what school do they attend? You can put multiple answers if you have multiple students attending different schools as well. Take a few more seconds here. So the first question we want to ask you is, of those priorities that the district developed, which ones do you find are the most important in this new development school boundaries? You can choose up to 2. Again, that's transportation, minimizing impact, natural barriers and major roads, avoiding island zones, neighborhood considerations, and capacity utilization. Again, choose the top 2 that you feel are the most important to keep as the new boundary considerations are built. Or not keep, rather, but maintain as priorities. Take a few more seconds, looking like everyone's answered here. See a little bit more movement. So this works as a word map. In one word, or if you use a few words, you can hyphenate. Please describe what you feel is the most critical issue to be addressed in these new development of boundary scenarios. So again, when we think about those building, those principles that we just saw, if you have any other critical issues or things in consideration that need to be a part of this, please let us know in this word map. And for those who aren't familiar with word maps, the larger words are those that are have more responses of them. Take a few more seconds here. All right, looks like it's not moving anymore. 3, 2, 1. So after seeing the proposed elementary scenarios, and I can go back to them, but you should see them on your screen on your phone. Which scenario do you believe is the best new boundary option? Again, if you don't feel that any of them are good, don't respond. And the next question will go over which one you should be eliminated, so you'll have options to also think about these in different ways. But for this, what do you believe is the best new boundary option? Yes. I can get to that. Well, they can get to that after this portion of the poll, because we'll stay back and talk about that. So yeah, so if you don't feel like you can answer it now, don't feel like you need to. This will be available in the survey later on. Take a few more seconds because I know people are looking at their maps. It should say on your.
I just want to know what's being voted for. Like, we just see purple, green, and I don't see.
So that's A, B, and C. Yeah, blue, green,
A,
purple.
B, C.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, it's hard to see on there. All right, take a few last seconds here. So this question is the inverse. After seeing the proposed scenarios, is there a scenario you believe that should be eliminated from these new boundary conditions? So A is blue, B is green, C is purple. If you feel that one is absolutely horrible and should be eliminated, go ahead and select that. And again, if you feel like they all feel, you feel that about all of them, please choose not to respond here. All right. Take another few seconds here. So this question is asking to rank the scenarios by most preferred. So most preferred would go at the top to least preferred. Least preferred would be at the bottom. Again, this is just a different way to look at how these scenarios are being considered. Again, if you believe that none are your most preferred, you may choose not to respond again. And just to give you a preview of the next few questions, we're going to look at each of the scenarios, and we want you to tell us what you believe is the issue with each of them. So if you have any notes about them, this is where you will be putting them in the next few questions. All right, a few seconds here. Absolutely. So that's green, purple, and blue. So now we're going to go into the specifics of each scenario. Again, you have your handout here. What do you see as the biggest concern for the blue scenario? These should be open-ended responses, so you can respond as many times as you want. I'll leave this up for a minute or two, so that way you can actually write it out, but just know that it will show up on the screen. And again, if you need to collect your thoughts, if you're not ready to respond to these questions, or you'd like to take it again, this will be live as a survey that you can take at your own discretion later on. Take another minute or two. Let me know if people still need more time. All right, I think we're going to move now to the green. If anyone's... Same thing here for the green scenario. What do you see as the biggest concern for this one? Okay. Sure, sure, that's absolutely okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. 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 That's fair. That's fair. This, and again, this is more of truly a live reaction of a scenario that you may feel like this is absolutely not something that we would ever consider. The one that's going to be online will actually allow you to have the address finder with you as you're taking the same poll, and then that way you can have some time to do that on your own, either tonight or tomorrow morning. That'll be included with the PowerPoint slides and the recording. Again, this is more of just a live reaction. If you don't feel comfortable, because again, you're totally right that these don't have the available lines to make that decision, please feel free not to. No, it will. It will. Hmm? I can show. I mean, do you want me to pull it up?
Oh no, yeah, well, just so I could find the poll so I can see, can you send me the link to the poll so I can
Yeah.
because I should have just, oh, there it is, way up here. And there it is. Well,
Yeah.
so
Well,
now-
no.
now it's
Yeah.
typed. So you could just plot lines, but just no.
All right. And then we're going to move to purple. Again, do not feel like if you don't have the information, again, this information is available, just not in this live polling feature. And then finally, the purple scenario. So again, if you have information that you'd like to provide as just a live reaction, just the initial reaction that you see from purple, please input it here.
I thought this was the same as the survey, and they were just kind of filling it out on their own time. I didn't realize you can only.
It's a lot. Yeah, you can only go through the.
I'm gonna pull out my computer real quick. Oh yeah, I was thinking maybe.
Sense.
I think I'm gonna see if I can make a QR code of the map and see. And would you be able to kind of put that up just in the corner so that the whole time this is going through, they can scan the QR code and open it just the web map?
Survey can do it. Probably not in the live, because this is the last question.
Oh yeah.
So I would say continue the survey, but I have it. Take another minute or two. We have one more question, which is just a catch-all. Any questions or concerns you have an additional. But again, we will be staying after this. So once you've answered this, the last question on the next slide, we'll be in the back ready to answer any other questions. All right. A few more seconds. So again, this is our final question here. This is just, again, if you'd like us to record your questions or concerns here, we will, again, be reviewing these insights and providing them in our scenario considerations as well. So please feel free to, again, record any questions you have, but we will be in the back to answer any final questions that you'd like regarding the scenarios and any projects, or any of the presentation data. Do you want to make any final?
Closing comments?
All right, so just want to, again, thank everybody for coming tonight. We'll be around if people have questions. I know MGT will be around, administrative staff will be around. In 2 weeks, so basically 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be right back here taking the feedback that we're getting tonight, taking the feedback that we're getting online, making adjustments and tweaks to everything as we continue to kind of push forward. But we do want to thank everybody tonight, and hopefully safe travels. In 2 weeks, it's going to be a little chillier than today. So, but thanks everybody, and make sure you let people know they can get online. They'll be able to see this presentation. They'll be able to see all the documents, and they'll be able to fill out feedback information as well. So thank you.